What if Faith Lehane is the daughter of Samantha Carter? Welcome back to Born into Darkness, Season 2, Episode 7. Secret Tok'ra Base, Unknown Location. Jacob Carter, retired Air Force general and current host of the Tok'ra known as Selmak, had just landed at Teltak, a Goa'uld cargo ship, on the desert that lay above the Tok'ra base. He exited the ship before walking the short distance to the ring transporters. As he waited for the sensors that would raise the rings around him to activate, Jacob stared at the Stargate in the distance. It was then that Selmak chose to speak to him mentally. You are thinking of Samantha, are you not? Yeah, it's been a while since that whole soul car incident. Visiting her, Mark, and the kids has been interesting. You could say that, but it's bringing me closer to my son again. That is a good thing. I was getting tired of your anger toward him. Jacob chuckled internally before the rings rose around him. There was a flash of white before he found himself on a platform within the base. The rings dropped back down into the platform. Jacob stepped off the ring platform, then made his way down a couple of hallways before reaching into his grey tunic and handing a crystal over to a female Tok'ra. The crystal contained the contents of his secret mission, data on the movements of several ships, and the Nakoda mining operations being run by the Goa'uld. Once he had handed the crystal to the woman, Jacob nodded at her before making his way down another hallway. He was heading to the High Council's chambers when he heard someone calling him from behind. Turning around, Jacob nodded as he saw Martouf running toward him. Jacob, said the man who was host to the Tok'ra known as Lantesh. We have received a message from Samantha on Earth. Why wasn't this? Jacob began, just as Selmak, knowing what he was going to say, interrupted him mentally. We were on a secret mission, Jacob. It's not his fault we were not notified earlier. Sorry, Jacob apologized, shaking his head at Martouf. What was the message? She just told me that she needed to see you urgently, Martouf explained as he stepped aside, motioning for Jacob to hurry toward the ring platform. Go, I will deal with the council. If they have any additional assignments, I will contact the SGC. Thanks, Jacob nodded as he rushed past Martouf and toward the ring transporters that had brought him down into the base. Activating the transporters, he watched as the rings rose out of the platform and rushed upwards, surrounding him before he was enveloped in white light. The next thing he knew, the rings were retreating back underground and Jacob was surrounded by desert once again. Running toward the Stargate, Jacob dialed the address for a buffer planet, which was standard procedure for any Tok'ra operative. After walking through the event horizon and onto the buffer planet, the gate deactivated. Jacob reached under the DHD and opened the panel before taking out the hidden GDO. He then dialed the Stargate once again for Earth. Once the event horizon had formed, he pressed the numbers on the GDO. A few seconds later, the red light between the screen and the number pad on the device turned green, and the screen read green light. He then crouched down and returned the GDO to the hidden panel before rushing through the open Stargate and into the SGC. He looked around at the familiar gray surroundings before noticing Major Carter and General Hammond at the foot of the Stargate ramp. He slowly made his way down while keeping a lookout at his surroundings, wondering what could be so urgent that he was needed back on Earth. He smiled at his daughter and sighed in relief when he saw that she seemed to be alright. He then took another quick look around and noticed that the rest of SG-1 was in the control room, along with a young woman he had never met. Jacob? Selmak had felt something from Jacob. It was as if her host had a feeling that he recognized the young woman somehow, but he couldn't place her anywhere. Nothing, Selmak. Dad! Carter walked up and gave him a tight hug. Hey kiddo, Jacob greeted her as he held her tightly. Everything alright? Martouf just told me that there was something urgent. I was on a mission for the council, so... that's why I haven't been able to get the news sooner. The Major really does have some important news, Jacob, Hammond explained as Carter pulled back. But we'll have you go through the standard medical checkups before we talk in my office. Alright, Jacob replied, still confused, as he followed Hammond and Carter out of the gate room. A few seconds later, Carter told her father that she had to deal with something, and that she would see him in General Hammond's office after the medical. "There's something you really need to know, Dad," the Major told him as Jacob nodded his head. He then nodded at the members of SG-1 who waved at him, while Teal'c simply nodded. He glanced at the wide-eyed young woman, then back at Carter as she walked up the stairs to the control room. He was then led away to the infirmary by General Hammond. Control room, SGC. Faith never could have believed that she would be meeting her grandfather, her real grandfather, as she nodded her head after the Major asked her if she was ready to meet the man. She remembered asking George and Sabrina Lehane about grandparents, only for them to yell that she didn't have any because they were dead. Faith glanced behind Carter as Hammond rushed up the stairs. He told them that Jacob had taken the elevator up to the infirmary for his checkup. He then turned to Carter. "Major, Miss McClay called from Sunnydale. I told her that you'd be giving her a call to check on what she had to say." "I understand, sir," replied the Major. "I have her number. I'll call her once we've talked to my dad." "Good," said the General. "I want you, Colonel O'Neill, Teal'c, and Dr. Jackson to report to the infirmary for your post-mission checks." Hammond then looked at O'Neill before turning his attention back to Carter and the other members of SG-1. "Don't be too hard on him," the General cautioned, tilting his head towards O'Neill. "He was put in a very difficult position." "Understood, General," acknowledged Carter, before Hammond rushed up the metallic stairs to his office next to the briefing room to prepare for the briefing with Jacob and Major Carter. In the meantime, O'Neill turned to Daniel and recalled what he had told him when Daniel came to his house on the day the ruse began. O'Neill had insulted their friendship by saying that there was no foundation between them, and now he had to apologize to the man he considered his best friend, the one who had saved his life by activating the Stargate for the first time. "Listen, Daniel, about the things I said. Mayborn and his flunkies had the whole place bugged. I had to make it real and... Don't worry about it." "But still," the Colonel insisted, pointing between Daniel and himself, "our friendship's still as solid as ever. The foundation's strong and..." "I understand, Jack," Daniel reassured him with a nod. "You did what you needed to do." "I agree, sir," Carter added, her arm around Faith's shoulders. "T," the Colonel began as he looked at Teal'c. "I'm sorry about everything, including the way I left without telling anyone." "It was tactically wise, O'Neill," Teal'c replied, bowing his head at the man. Faith watched the interaction between the two men and could tell that there was a great deal of respect that the Colonel had for Teal'c. She still had that odd feeling inside her, her reaction to the symbiote. But she was doing her best to push that aside. In fact, Faith had a feeling that she would have to deal with alien symbiotes for a long time. She then thought about having the same feeling again when she would meet her grandfather for the first time. It was something she couldn't believe, something that was making her mentally jump up and down in excitement. She had a grandfather. Then she felt someone prodding her before she shook her head and heard Carter whisper to her, "Ellie?" "Sorry," Faith apologized. "I was just thinking. I just, once again, wanted you to meet the leader of my team, Colonel Jack O'Neill." "We've met," O'Neill reminded her, his hands in his pockets and a grin on his face. "Talked about cake and everything." "I've actually had better," Faith replied as she shrugged her shoulders, grinning on the inside when she saw the Colonel's eyes open wide. "Much creamier and much sweeter, and..." "I'm telling you," O'Neill insisted, waving his hands about, "you haven't had the best. There's this place downtown where the cakes are world class and..." "I know it, sir," Carter interjected with a small smile. "Got her a cupcake from there." "Oh," O'Neill murmured. "Okay, well then, off we go to the infirmary." "Ellie," Carter called as she placed her hand on Faith's back. "We've got to go get checked out and then talk with your grandfather in General Hammond's office. If you want, you could wait for us in the briefing room. There should be some donuts and coffee. I mean, I'm not sure if you like coffee, and the coffee is pretty passable for coffee. And I'll be in the briefing room." Faith agreed with a nod. "Or," Carter began as she looked behind Faith and called Walter's name. "Ma'am?" the technician responded as he swiveled his chair and stood up. "Walter," Colonel Carter requested, "could you show my daughter the dialing program and details on some of the worlds we've been through while I get my medical done?" Maybe go through a gate diagnostic with her? Really? Faith asked, trying to hide her excitement as she looked at the Major. However, a bit of it was already leaking through, and she was doing everything she could to stop herself from geeking out over everything she had seen. After all, she still had to be the tough Slayer. Of course, ma'am, Walter assured her before Carter explained that Faith had limited clearance, which, in her case, meant she was not allowed through the gate. Walter then took another chair and set it down beside him before Carter squeezed Faith's arm and told her that she would be right back. Then she and the rest of SG-1 went up to the briefing room so that they could head to the infirmary. When she reached the top of the stairs, Carter never heard the technician talking about the dialing computer, nor did she hear Faith interrupting him and asking whether the computer was built on Earth or if it was alien. Major Carter was the lead scientist of the team responsible for creating the computer, Walter explained, noticing the surprised look on Faith's face. He then went on to show her the ins and outs of Stargate diagnostics before moving on to the various planets they had already visited. All the while, Faith's mind was running through thousands of things, foremost among them being how proud she was of her mother. However, another part of her was extremely fearful of how Carter might think of her. From what he's saying, from what I've heard, Mom's a genius, Faith thought to herself. And look at me. What if everyone starts comparing me to her? I know comparisons will begin. I know people will say I'm not as smart as her or that, oh God, what if she thinks I'm not like her? That I'm stupid and, damn it, stop it. She loves you. She told you so herself. So stop it. But Faith couldn't stop thinking, and she wasn't sure how to bring it up. For now, she watched Walter go through some gate diagnostics while he explained the readings to her. General Hammond's office. 40 minutes later. Come on, George, said Jacob as he sat across from Hammond. What's going on? Why is everyone being so secretive? I mean, even Selmak can feel that something's wrong with the atmosphere in this place. Jacob meant every word he was saying. It had started with the checkup after he returned to Earth, when the personnel had been more friendly toward him. They were even smiling more when he was in the infirmary, with the nursing staff whispering to each other while glancing at him. However, whenever he asked what was going on, no one would tell him anything. You think something's wrong because everyone's smiling more? Asked Hammond. You know what I mean, George, replied Jacob. It's just a bit off. It was then that someone knocked on Hammond's office door. Come in, called Hammond as he and Jacob stood up. The door opened and Major Carter stepped inside before closing it behind her. She then sat down next to her dad. Jacob could see that his daughter was nervous about something, as she kept glancing at General Hammond, who nodded before telling her to explain to Jacob what she had told him after learning the truth. What truth? Questioned Jacob as he noticed sudden fear on Carter's face. This was the same woman who had faced down the Goa'uld, killed Satesh, and rescued him from Sokar's clutches on Netu. Yet now, fear was plainly visible in her eyes, and Selmak could not help but notice it. Be calm, Jacob. I've never seen her so scared, Selmak. I mean, she used to get scared when she thought either Eleanor or I were going to scold her, but that was when she was just a little girl. Oh God, do you think something happened? Let us hear what she has to say, Jacob. Dad, began the Major as she leaned forward and held his hands. Her eyes avoided his, instead focusing on her thumbs as they made small circles on top of the man's hands. When I was 16, I, well, I was pregnant. The announcement was something that the Air Force general had never expected. He could feel that even Selmak was floored as the Tok'ra symbiote searched through the man's memories for any sign that the blonde woman in front of them had been pregnant all those years ago. Finding nothing, Jacob opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked toward General Hammond, who nodded his head before turning his attention back to the Major as she hung her head. Sam? Murmured Jacob gently as Carter looked up with tears in her eyes. When? I mean, how? Why? I mean, why didn't you tell me? It was when you were deployed, Carter explained softly. I I found out soon after I got accepted into the academy. Sam? Breathed Jacob as Selmak remained silent. the both of them still in shock. I thought you'd be disappointed in me, Carter admitted as she wiped her eyes. I thought you'd be angry that I ruined my chance to get into the academy and I couldn't tell you. Sam, Jacob responded, closing his eyes and shaking his head. There's no way I would have been disappointed in you. I'm just disappointed that you felt you couldn't tell me. Who helped you? Did Mark know? How did you handle this by yourself? You should have told me, Sam. I could have come back and Major Carter interrupted Selmak as Jacob's eyes glowed for a few seconds. Jacob was becoming agitated, which led me to take control so that he could calm down. The Major could only nod as General Hammond explained to Selmak that it had been the hardest thing the Major had ever had to tell anyone. Samantha, Selmak began, being that Jacob and I share the same body, this has come as a shock to me as well. He is indeed disappointed that you did not share this news with him, but we are looking forward to meeting your child. Selmak then closed his eyes so that he could return control to a formerly agitated Jacob. Kiddo, Jacob began, I do want to meet your child, my grandchild, but I need to know when this happened and please? I'm not angry with you, I'm just surprised. The Major then went on to tell the story of how she had been so excited that she called Jacob where he was deployed after she received the acceptance letter. She then told him that she called Betty before going to Ron's house to tell him in person. That glasses wearing geeky guy? Jacob asked. He lived a few doors down. He's the father? Yeah, the Major confirmed. Mark didn't know, and I can't wait to tell him about Ellie and Ellie, Jacob asked as he sat up straight, his eyes widening as a smile slowly developed on his face. A granddaughter. I named her after Mom, the Major revealed as she looked at her grinning father, who now had tears in his eyes at the news. The only one who knew was Aunt Betty, and when I started showing, I used to hide it from Mark by wearing loose clothes. Aunt Betty was there for me, Dad, and my plan was to turn over custody of Ellie to her until I graduated from the academy, and then have custody returned to me. Then I would have introduced you and Mark to her. At least that was the plan. I knew I was being selfish, but I thought about what would happen after she was born. Would I change my mind, or would I still continue? But when the time came to deliver Ellie, Dad, she was taken from me. What? Jacob asked as Selmak simply looked on. Sam? George? When I gave birth, the Major continued, Aunt Betty and I didn't hear her cry. She was in our arms after the doctor pronounced her stillborn. And we couldn't. Oh God, the memory. Jacob, General Hammond interjected when he noticed the Major having difficulty recounting the moment she had believed her baby had died. Does the Tok'ra have any information on early Earth history? Anything on magic, demons, vampires? You know, the things that we consider to be horror stories. You're serious? Jacob asked. He noticed the serious look on General Hammond's face and realized that there was something they weren't telling him yet. Selmak then took control and explained to the general that there were stories of creatures that had existed during the time of Ra. Stories had been passed down about many dead human bodies found in Egypt during the time of Egeria, the queen who would later go on to defect from the Goa'uld and form the Tok'ra. However, Selmak claimed that they were just stories, as were magic and demons. Wait, Jacob exclaimed after Selmak released control. You're telling me that magic and the supernatural really exist? Yes, the Major acknowledged as she wiped her eyes and looked at Hammond before turning her gaze toward Jacob. Ellie, or at least Aunt Betty and I were placed under a... I know this is hard to believe, but we were placed under a very powerful spell, one that made us think Ellie was dead, all under the orders of a secretive organization that deals with these threats. Wait, Jacob protested as he put his hand on his head and leaned back on his seat. Let me get this straight. Some mysterious organization used so-called magic to kidnap a baby. Are you sure there wasn't another explanation? What Selmak said was right. Those were just stories. And Ellie's what this organization refers to as a slayer, Hammond explained. They are mystically powered women who seem to be activated when they are only children. This organization sees slayers as a weapon that does not belong to any military on Earth, including military families. What? Jacob exclaimed as he looked at the Major and then at Hammond and finally back at Carter. They kidnapped her. They used magic to kidnap her. Where is she? Do you know? Let's get her back. That's why I asked for you, Carter explained as Hammond picked up his phone and called down to the control room to have Walter bring up Faith. We found her, Dad. We can explain everything once you meet her, but one thing you should know. She's had a very hard life with the family that the council sent her to in Boston. And she can sense symbiotes. She can? Jacob stopped when he noticed the same girl from earlier as she approached the briefing room table and looked back at him through the window. Jacob looked at Faith, then at Carter, who gave him a small smile before the man hurried across to the other side of the office. He opened the door next to the window and stepped toward Faith. Ellie? Jacob asked as Faith's bottom lip quivered while she nodded her head. I'm... Jacob began as Selmak took a back seat, allowing her host to speak with the girl who would be both their granddaughters. However, try as he might, Jacob couldn't finish what he wanted to say before Faith interrupted him. Never had a granddad before, Faith murmured. Jacob took a few steps forward and pulled Faith into a tight embrace. He noticed Faith flinch slightly and guessed that it had something to do with what his daughter had said, that Faith could sense symbiotes. A few seconds later, Faith put her arms around Jacob's back and tightened her grip. You do now, Jacob assured her as he tightened his embrace. You do now. To be continued.